Gavin Newsom making his way to Washington, D.C. today for a two-day trip, reportedly to meet with senior Trump administration officials and members of Congress in a push for federal fire aid. At this point, no word on whether Newsom will meet directly with President Trump.
Jessica Millon Patterson is the chair of the California Republican Party. She joins us now with more. Jessica, thanks for being with us. Let's start with the governor. What do you make of this trip to Washington? It comes at the same time he's calling for California lawmakers to, quote, Trump-proof the state.
Greg, it's certainly an interesting move, but not something that we should be surprised by from Gavin Newsom. He has often said one thing and done another. So Trump-proofing while you're in California and then heading over to D.C. to ask President Trump for help doesn't seem like a big stretch for him.
Yeah, so let's talk about this so-called Trump time then for the past 2 weeks. The president signing executive orders right and left, threatening and imposing tariffs, all while working to scale back the size of the government through DOGE. Can you give us your response to his first 15 days back in office? What have you liked so far, and is there anything that you don't?
Promises made, promises kept. These are all things that President Trump ran on. When we talk about the size and scope of government waste, when we're hearing some of these bills that are coming out that have been spent from taxpayers' dollars, I think a lot of Americans are scratching their heads when we have an affordability crisis going on. We have an energy crisis going on. We have a homeless crisis going on. So I think especially when we're looking at the waste, fraud, and abuse, this is something that a lot of Americans can get behind. You talked about the tariffs. This is absolutely a tool that President Trump said he would use. We saw earlier this week when he used that tool with both Canada and Mexico. They came to the negotiation table right away, and we saw a pause directly right after that. With Colombia, we now have the president of Colombia offering to use his own plane for the transportation of illegal immigrants back to his country. So I think these are all things that President Trump ran on. These are things that the American people were asking for, and now he's delivering on it.
Jessica, you mentioned immigration. As you know, one of the big issues over the past couple of weeks has been just that, immigration. For 3 days now, L.A. has seen walkouts and protests against the administration's deportation policies. What is your response to the protesters, as well as to the Trump administration, which is now apprehending over 1,000 undocumented migrants a day?
Yeah, I think, when we talked about, turning not just California, right? We have seen the entire country turn into border states because of the Biden-Harris administration's policy when it came to illegal immigration. And so when you had places like New York and Chicago buckling to the pressures of the migrant crisis, it was very clear that something needed to be done. When you have states and cities that are sanctuaries in name and are unwilling to work with the federal government so that we can find the hardest criminals and make sure that they are deported, it makes it very difficult to do this job. I think when you are protesting something and your idea of protesting is going out in the middle of the freeway and impacting individuals who are just trying to get to and from work, individuals that are under the same pressures that every other American is under right now, I think it's a really bad look. I don't think it's an effective message. And I think what we're seeing right now is President Trump delivering on his promises when it came to the crisis that we had at the border, both the humanitarian crisis and the national security crisis.
So, Jessica, what do you say to the students who are out there today who may be scared they or their families could be scooped up or deported?
I think what we want right now is our public safety to work with federal officials so that we are making sure that those that are being deported are the worst of the worst, the criminals that have not only committed crimes here, but back in their home countries as well. And we should be supportive of our public safety institutions working with federal government to make sure that happens.
Let's pivot to Democrats quickly. This week in the DNC elected new leadership, including Minnesota's Ken Martin as chair and David Hogg as co-vice chair. This, as a new Quinnipiac poll finds, only 31% of Americans have a favorable view of the Democratic Party as it stands. As chair of the California GOP, what is your advice to your friends across the aisle as they work to rebuild after the loss last year.
Don't do anything different. Do everything exactly the same way that you have been doing it. And in fact, I think that's what we've really seen. I don't think a lot of Democrats have looked at the past few months, the past few years, and said, you know, these are the things that we should have been doing differently. In fact, I think a lot of them are doubling down on their policies. We're seeing that right here in California. While our cities are on fire, we have this homeless crisis that continues to rage, and affordability here in California. What have California Democrats focused on? Trump-proofing California. I think that, you know, for my benefit, I would love for them to continue doing the same thing because it is incredibly out of touch with what Californians and Americans are worried about.
Before we go, Jessica, President Trump has promised a golden age for the U.S. When he was in the Palisades last month, he said there can be no golden age without the Golden State. So what has Trump's victory meant for California, which, despite having more Republicans than any other state, has not elected a Republican statewide in 19 years?
It's true that we haven't elected a Republican statewide in quite some time, but we are seeing a major shift. You know, since I took over as chair of the California Republican Party, we've registered over 1 million new voters here in California. This is really exciting for us. We saw a shift in every single assembly seat, every single Senate seat, every single congressional district for President Trump from 2020 to 2024. We saw the propositions. California Republican Party was with the California voter 89% of the time. I think that President Trump is absolutely right. We cannot have a golden age in America without the Golden State returning back to its once shining city on the hill. And so I think that he is absolutely right with that. And I think that we're seeing that. Californians are fed up with what they've been served up over the last few years with one-party rule.
Jessica Malone Patterson, chair of the California Republican Party. Thanks for being with us.
Always be with you guys.
All right. Thank you.